Hi, everybody. The tragic story of Nicola Edgington serves as an illustration of the potential consequences that may arise as a result of the association between major mental health conditions and systemic inadequacies. The various repercussions that could occur are demonstrated by this particular situation, which serves as an example. There are a number of ramifications that have been brought about as a result of this, one of which is the possibility that they will lose their life. This particular case serves as a horrifying illustration of the potential consequences that could result from situations such as these, and it is relevant to this particular scenario because it illustrates the potential consequences. In 2011, Edgington committed a horrible murder despite the fact that he had been warned numerous times and had appealed for assistance, but it was disregarded. Furthermore, Edgington had completed the murder nevertheless. Additionally, he had yelled out for assistance. The regrettable truth is that Edgington's actions could not have been spared from occurring. Furthermore, he had yelled out for assistance to be offered all throughout the situation. Despite the fact that Edgington had a history of mental illness that was meticulously documented during his lifetime, this was something that made it possible for it to take place. As a result of this experience, the significance of getting comprehensive mental health treatment systems and preventative programs into place as fast as feasible has been brought into broader light. In addition, the organization encourages and supports the deployment of preventative measures, which are designed to deter potential problems. In light of the fact that around 1 in 8 people are impacted by mental health concerns, this is a topic of concern on a global scale, and it is something that ought to be taken into mind when one takes into consideration the estimations that have been offered. The estimations that were produced indicated that there would be around 1 billion people all over the world who were battling with a mental health issue in the year 2019. This was the prediction that was made. Taking into account the total population of the world, this number was accurate. Conditions of this nature have the potential to have substantial ramifications for society as a whole, which is not an exceptional occurrence by any stretch of the imagination. On the other hand, this is not always the position. There has been a rise in the rates of unemployment and disability, and there has also been an increase in the chances of engaging in criminal behavior in certain cases. The ramifications that have arisen as a direct result of this are numerous, and these are only some of them. There would be an increase in the average unemployment rate, which is one of the other consequences that would inevitably occur. The unfortunate events that unfolded in the case of Nicola Edgington, on the other hand, are a wonderful instance of this phenomena. It is a clear evidence of the fact that this does have the capacity to occur, as well as a clear indication of the devastating ramifications that may occur when mental health needs are not effectively treated. Both of these things are clear indications. A person by the name of Nicola Edgington was the one who can be held accountable for the terrible events that took place. This category of mental health problems encompasses a wide range of conditions that can be associated with mental illness. Psychosis, schizophrenia, hallucinations, and borderline personality disorder are some of the conditions that fall under this category. The group also includes a number of additional criteria. These are listed. One of the illnesses that could be categorized as belonging to this group is psychosis, which is another sickness that falls under this category. This category also includes other diseases. Due to the fact that these disorders typically involve severe cognitive and perceptual issues, they have the potential to significantly hinder a person's ability to perform throughout the activities that they engage in on a daily basis throughout their life. As a consequence of this, an individual can be confronted with a significant obstacle, as a result of the fact that this has the potential to significantly restrict the individual's capacity to function. It is quite likely that this will be a big obstacle for the individual to circumvent. These conditions put people at risk of participating in behaviors that are both violent and expressive. People who are affected by these diseases are at danger. This is due to the fact that these disorders are characterized by certain qualities, which is one of the aspects that sets them apart from other medical conditions. A considerable number of personality disorders are defined by the continual manipulation or violation of the rights of other individuals, and the individual in question typically does not have any emotions of guilt for the actions that they have performed. This is another characteristic that is associated with personality disorders. In addition to this, the existence of this attribute is a defining characteristic of a wide range of personality disorders. In addition to this, individuals have a propensity to behave in this manner, which is still another characteristic that can be used to diagnostically identify these disorders. The clinical diagnostic that is utilized by professionals in the field of medicine in order to classify persons who have sociopathological tendencies is known as antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, which is an abbreviation that stands for the entire word. This diagnosis is applied in order to categorize individuals. It is the abbreviation ASPD that is used to signify the term that is being referred to. Even though individuals who suffer from antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, do not necessarily engage in violent action, they constantly exhibit behaviors that put the safety of others in peril. This is the case even though they do not necessarily engage in violent behavior. Keep in mind that this is an extremely important topic. Despite the fact that it is feasible that they might not necessarily engage in violent action, this is the correct view of the situation. In contrast to other mental diseases, psychopathy is distinguished by a lack of empathy, which is one of the defining aspects of the condition since it is one of the defining qualities of psychopathy. Putting this contrast into emphasis is absolutely necessary. Other qualities that are displayed by this individual include dishonesty, impulsivity, and a disrespect for the norms and standards of society. These are only few of the characteristics that are displayed. The tremendous potential for persuasion that psychopathy possesses is yet another trait that distinguishes it from other personality disorders. When it comes to each and every one of these characteristics, it is not out of the question to establish a connection between psychopathy and each and every one of them. Very severe cases of psychopathy have the potential to result in significant injuries, which may include the need to be hospitalized as well as participation in criminal activities. These injuries may also entail the need to be committed. Specifically, this is because the psychopathy has the potential to cause severe issues. This is the reason why this is the case. Another thing that should be taken into mind is the fact that it is not completely out of the question that any of these disorders could result in significant injuries. This is something that should be taken into consideration. It is important to note that the event that involved Nicola Edgington serves as a good illustration of the extreme end of this range. The extreme example is demonstrated by this incident, which serves as an illustration. The reason why it is relevant is because it demonstrates how her inability to control the challenges she was experiencing with her mental health led to adverse outcomes that were fatal. In light of this, it is essential to take note of it. Specifically, it is noteworthy because it demonstrates how her unwillingness to tackle her concerns led to tragic outcomes, which is the reason why it is significant. This is the reason why something is noteworthy. Specifically, this is the reason why it is important to consider. Bexley Heath was the site of two separate violent assaults that took place on October 10, 2011. And Nicola Edgington was the individual who was responsible for both of them. Both of the assaults took place in the immediate vicinity of the neighborhood. Both of the assaults were carried out by individuals who were notoriously violent. At the same location within the same neighborhood, each of these assaults took place concurrently. Both of the assaults that they committed against each other were carried out by Edgington, who was the one who carried them out. Carrie Clark was not only the first person she attempted to stab, but she was also the first person she had attempted to stab in the past and had been successful in doing so during that time period. The second incidents that took place included a grandma named Sally Hodkin, who was the one who was the victim of the incident. The second event was the one that she was a victim of. She had reached the age of 58 at the time of her passing, which indicates that she had achieved that age at the time of her passing. By the time she passed away, she had reached the age of 58, and she had lived to that point in her life. She had lived to that point in her life. Nevertheless, in spite of the knowledge that Edgington had a history of both aggressive behavior and mental illness in the past, the early response by law enforcement and mental health specialists was not successful in preventing these terrible catastrophes from manifesting themselves. In spite of the fact that Edgington has been impacted by both of these events in the past, the scenario that exists right now is the one that is now occurring. On the other hand, the fact that Edgington had previously been plagued with both of these illnesses did not prevent us from finding ourselves in this specific scenario. The reason that we got ourselves in this specific situation was due to the fact that this particular reason was taking place. During the time that Nicola Edgington was being born, the family that she was born into was going through a lot of difficulties on a daily basis. This family is the one that Nicola Edgington was born into. During that particular period, her household was currently dealing with a significant amount of difficulties. At the time that she was born, the family that she was born into was going through a lot of difficulties. She was born into this circumstance. Throughout her entire life, she was a tough, obstinate, and violent person. She exhibited a really difficult demeanor. The entirety of her life was marked by the persistent manifestation of these features. The attributes that are the subject of this discussion were continuously displayed by her for the whole of her life. As a direct result of her actions, she caused her connections with members of her family to become strained, which was a direct consequence of her behavior. She caused this to affect her relationships with her family members. She became more and more distant from them as a direct result of the way in which she carried herself all during the relationship. In the course of her early childhood, she was subjected to a variety of experiences that laid the groundwork for her to encounter difficulties of this nature in the years to come, thanks to the framework that was formed. She would eventually be forced to deal with major concerns that were associated with her mental health, and she would be required to deal with these issues once she was forced to deal with them. In addition to that, she would be compelled to deal with these circumstances. It was during these times that Edgington regularly required the intervention of law enforcement. This was due to the fact that she was experiencing problems with her mother, Marion. Edgington did not complete her schooling until she was 15 years old, and she did not complete her studies until she was 15 years old. This meant that she did not leave school until she was 15 years old. It was solely the responsibility of Edgington's mother to ensure that her children received an education. The duty for Edgington's children fell on Edgington his shoulders. It is essential to take into consideration the fact that Edgington's mother was not only a member of the community, but she was also a member of the leadership of the law enforcement apparatus. It is highly important to take into account the fact that Edgington's mother was not only a member of the community, but she was also a part of the leadership of the law enforcement apparatus. This is something that must be taken into mind. She struggled with unstable relationships, a large number of pregnancies, and substance misuse during her formative years, all of which contributed to the advancement of her mental health illnesses. She struggled with all of these things throughout her life. Her mental health problems were significantly influenced by this, which played a big role in their rise. In the process of the growth of her situation, it is probable that each of these factors played a role in developing it. In addition to that, she had a considerable amount of experience with the improper use of a variety of substances. This was something that she continued to strive against for the duration of her adult life. This struggle was something that she had to go through throughout her entire adult life. It seemed as though Edgington's life was beginning to revert to a more stable state after she married a young Jamaican man. This was the case after the marriage. Due to the circumstances that had transpired, this was the predicament that had arisen. In the short period of time that had passed after the wedding, the situation that had taken place was the one that had been stated earlier in this paragraph. The brief period that followed the wedding was distinguished by this particular situation, which was the distinguishing characteristic there. This scenario was the defining characteristic. She became a member of the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God for the very first time after the birth of her children. This was the first time that she became involved with the activities of the church. She initially became a member of this organization after the birth of her children, which was the first time she started doing so. As a result of the fact that she had never before attended a church service, this was the very first time that she had ever had the opportunity to go to one. She began to deal with important issues that were related to her mental health very soon after it was restored by the time it was regained. However, this stability did not endure for a very long time, and she began to cope with these challenges very soon after recovery. In addition, she started finding it difficult to deal with these problems almost immediately after it was restored. Marian Edgington, who was Nicola Edgington's mother, passed away in the year 2005. Mary Edgington. This occurrence marked the beginning of her departure from the place. Her mother was the one who came up with the idea of naming her daughter Nicola Edgington. At that same instant, she was removed from both this location and this time. After Nicola Edgington's body was found, it was discovered that she had passed away since her body was found. Immediately after her detention, she was subjected to a mental evaluation, and then, after that, she was transported to a psychiatric facility that was equipped with security facilities. The completion of that was followed by the granting of authorization for her to enter the facility where she was being held. After the investigation, it was determined that she suffered from a mental disorder and that she was not suited for jail. As a result, she was admitted to a hospital rather than being held in custody. This was because it was determined that she was eligible for hospitalization. This particular incident occurred as a direct result of the fact that she did not satisfy the requirements necessary to be placed in jail. As a result of the fact that she was admitted to the hospital before being discharged from the facility where she was receiving treatment, this ended up happening as a consequence. After Edgington was discharged from the mental health hospital in 2009, he was subjected to round-the-clock monitoring for the rest of his life. This monitoring will continue until he passes away. All the way up until the moment he passed away, he was under constant surveillance. He was eventually released from the facility where he had been imprisoned in 2009 after having been released from the facility where he had been detained. This took place after he had been released from the facility where he had been staying. The fact that she had a recurrent problem with her mental health was not a factor that prevented her from being allowed to continue living in the establishment while she was a resident of the community. She was allowed to continue living there. In spite of the fact that she had a problem with her mental health, this was the particular circumstance that she found herself in. The provision of mental health care that was not only trustworthy but also effective was in limited supply during this time period, which was a crucial element that contributed to the occurrence of the events that took place in 2011. During the sad occurrences that took place in 2011, this was a significant aspect that played a role in each of those events. During the month of October in the year 2011, which was the year in which the incident took place, Edgington experienced a significant breakdown in his mental health. This occurred during the time period in which the event took place. It was the first time in his entire life that he had ever experienced a nervous breakdown of this nature. There had never been a single instance in his life in which he had ever encountered one. Despite the fact that she made a number of requests for assistance and asked for assistance on multiple occasions, the authorities mainly disregarded her appeals and refused to assist her the bulk of the time. She also sought for assistance on multiple occasions. The fact that she made a great number of inquiries and pleaded for assistance did not change the reality that this was the condition that occurred. Her inability to take action was the cause of the worsening of her mental state, which ultimately resulted in the terrible atrocities that were performed against Carrie Clark and Sally Hodkin. These atrocities were committed as a direct result of her inability to take action. As a result of the fact that she was unwilling to engage in any kind of action, she was ultimately one of the individuals who were responsible for these activities. Because she was unable to take action, she was eventually responsible for it, which is the reason why she was compelled to accept responsibility for it. In the end, she was ultimately liable for it. There were many interactions that Edgington had with the authorities on the day of the attack, including those with the police and the medical staff. Nonetheless, none of these interactions were successful in preventing her from carrying out the violent crimes that she had planned. Carrie Clark was the first person she went after, and ultimately, she was successful in stabbing her. Her intention was to stab Carrie Clark, and she was the object of her effort. Following that, she proceeded to continue stabbing Sally Hodkin, who ultimately succumbed to the weight of her wounds and unfortunately passed away as a result of the terrible circumstances she was in throughout her life. Edgington was taken into arrest and held in jail very shortly after that, and at the same moment, an inquiry into the facts surrounding the occurrence was put into motion. From her point of view, Nicola Edgington draws attention to the critical significance of providing proper mental health care and the unavoidable necessity of maintaining continuous surveillance of those who are suffering from major mental health issues on a consistent basis. At the same time, she stresses the significance of making certain that these persons are constantly under surveillance. Having both of these conditions satisfied is an essential need that must be met. For the goal of ensuring that persons are dealt with in a manner that is appropriate, it is essential to take into consideration both of these characteristics. Furthermore, it underlines the need of law enforcement and mental health professionals giving reactions that are not only suitable but also at the appropriate timing in order to prevent the occurrence of future tragedies that are identical to the one that occurred. Thank you for watching. I recommend our other crime videos.